Martín Gómez-Ullate, a Spanish social scientist at the University of Extremadura, works across social anthropology, cultural sociology, ethnomusicology, heritage studies and tourism, focusing on cultural identity, musical heritage, intercultural relations and the socio-economic and educational dimensions of tourism in Spain and Portugal, and has contributed studies on religious tourism, European cultural roots, youth engagement through heritage-based festivals and the use of digital humanities methods in heritage and landscape research. In his 2003 study The Land of the Rainbow Nation Without Borders, he presents the Rainbow Gatherings as a mobile, transnational countercultural movement that arose from the late 1960s American hippie milieu and evolved into a global nomadic network grounded in communal values, spiritual eclecticism and alternative ways of life, functioning as temporary, periodically recreated communities in which collective identity is built through shared practices, consensus decision-making, ritualized behavior and everyday cooperation, and where many participants experience an initiatory transformation that reshapes their subsequent projects and lifestyles. Drawing on a comment by Rainbow veteran Rob Sauvois, Gómez-Ullate underlines that the Rainbow family has never constituted a formal organization with a founding moment, statutes or leadership. Instead, it is presented as a simple feeling and a basic human tendency to return to nature and practice reciprocity and mutual care, and the gatherings are described as alternative meeting places that appear and disappear in different regions of the world, waxing and waning according to a largely spontaneous calendar that tends to coincide with holiday periods, particularly in summer. Unlike communes or permanent settlements, these encampments are short-term temporary autonomous zones, to use Hakim Bey's expression, yet they materialize a fundamental idea, the creation of a utopian community that attempts to realize a vision or dream of free and egalitarian coexistence without being tied to land, property, fixed infrastructure, permanent benefits, formal hierarchies or charismatic leadership, and without the institutional burdens that have encumbered other utopian experiments. Their nomadic nature, which Gómez-Ullate compares to the squatter movement and squatted social centers that likewise appear and disappear while reproducing recognizable organizational forms and cultural practices, means that their strength lies in the enactment of values rather than the control of territory. In the United States, Europe, and Spain, the Rainbow Gatherings are identified as the most important countercultural meetings of their type, with Northern Europe offering only one comparable experience, a movement called Ting. In Europe the gatherings are smaller and less publicized than those in the United States, often only reaching local media when a relatively isolated area is occupied for several weeks by hundreds of participants. While in countries such as Spain and Portugal they are much smaller than in North America but more homogeneous, bringing together veterans and newcomers, local inhabitants and foreigners, people from rural and urban backgrounds, political activists and spiritual seekers, professionals and artisans, older people and young children, and thereby fulfilling a strong function of cohesion and identity building. The analysis is framed in terms of collective identity as a cognitive model that integrates the diverse orientations, actors and processes at work in contemporary social movements. The rainbow phenomenon is presented as extending far beyond the gatherings themselves, providing reference models for countercultural lifestyles and giving rise to a rich mythopoetic elaboration that produces culture, traditions, folklore and values in both ceremonial and everyday contexts. To the point that Gómez-Ullate encounters in various alternative settlements material traces, organizational forms, activities, rituals and symbolic references that clearly derive from the rainbow tradition. Identity is expressed in the way the term rainbow is applied to individuals and groups, who may call themselves rainbow people, a rainbow tribe or the rainbow family, or speak of a rainbow-oriented group, a rainbow environment, a rainbow life or a more or less rainbow state of mind, and for many informants the first gathering functions as a rite of initiation, an event that changed their life and set them on trajectories such as joining caravans, alternative communities or activist projects. Comparing his observations with Michael Neiman's monograph People of the Rainbow, A Nomadic Utopia, Gómez-Ullate notes that the experience leaves different marks depending on the person, Some participants later join well-known communal or activist projects such as the Farm, Greenpeace or Sea Shepherd. Others embrace Buddhism, Christianity or reconstructed Native American spiritualities. Others undergo more modest but concrete transformations, like starting a garden, organizing neighborhood cleanups or founding local clubs, and in all these cases the rainbow family is described as a portal through which people pass to begin a new life that was first tested at a gathering. To situate this phenomenon, Gómez-Ullate reviews the social construction of heterodoxy in the United States, recalling the long line of minority communities and dissident currents, from Amish, Quakers and Mennonites to adventurers, frontiersmen, utopian socialists, Thoreau and the transcendentalists, nature-oriented minorities, immigrant groups perceived as threats, beatniks and hippies, that have used Turtle Island as a symbolic refuge and a space for projecting new social forms, with the western frontier embodying both the promise of founding a new society freed from feudal constraints and the temptation to abandon civilization and return to savagery. North American culture, he argues, has concentrated in a relatively short period an unusually rich polyphony of worldviews that have coexisted, influenced each other and continually offered those exposed to them a repertoire of alternative constructions to the dominant ideology, and it is in this context that he places the emergence of the rainbow family. The narrative traces lines from the Dharma bums who sought Native American paths and participated in peace pipe ceremonies and American Indian church rituals, through the heterogeneous and decentralized fabric woven from hippie culture, back to the land projects, American Indian teachings, Anacap practices, Eastern mysticism and shamanic traditions, to the broader Western history of esoteric and alternative spiritual currents that had long circulated among educated elites in Europe through symbolist literature, romantic travel narratives about the exotic East and studies of Oriental wisdom, and were systematized in figures such as Wilhelm Reich, C.G. Jung and P.D. Ouspensky, or in the case of the United States, in the provocative and influential life and work of Helena P. Blavatsky and the Theosophical movement. Only from the mid-20th century did this diversity become widely accessible, as classics of Eastern philosophy were translated and popularized, gurus and ashrams established themselves in the West, yoga schools and alternative therapies proliferated and the consumption of psychedelic substances spread. The 1960s counterculture is described as a collage of fragments adapted to a largely uniform social background, with heterodoxy fragmented into numerous groups and networks that debate, reinterpret and expand their particular visions of the world, and the rainbow gatherings are identified as one of the most solid and enduring manifestations of this late 20th century counterculture, with national gatherings in the United States attracting between 20,000 and 35,000 people and European gatherings drawing around 5,000, alongside other large-scale events such as Berlin's Love Parade. Although statistically small, the rainbow movement plays an important role as one of the few consistent models of subcultural ethos and worldview, and Gómez-Ullate sets out to trace its development from its origins in the turbulent United States of the late 1960s to its expansion into Europe and consolidation in Spain, before offering an anthropological interpretation based on fieldwork in gatherings in Spain and Portugal. In reconstructing the antecedents of the movement, he points to the hippie mobilizations of the mid-1960s, particularly the opposition to the Vietnam and Cambodian wars and conscription, and the emergence of large-scale rock festivals, alternative fairs and pacifist assemblies under names such as Human Me In, Love In, Vortex, Renaissance Fair, Festival of Life and, paradigmatically, Woodstock in 1969, which one veteran, Fantuzzi, retrospectively describes as his first rainbow gathering even though the rainbow family did not yet exist, because caravans, communal living and shared songs were already present. Long before the Summer of Love in San Francisco's Haight-Ashbury in 1967, numerous communities had established themselves in the countryside under names that combined the notion of family, commune or tribe with references to their territory or purpose, forming open nodes on a circuit traversing the entire country, where travelers were routinely received, while in the city's shelters and soup kitchens maintained by such communities served road dogs, wanderers, homeless people and runaway youth attracted by the promise of a joyful, utopian life, on the road, caravans in large buses and itinerant troupes like the Living Theatre, the diggers and the merry pranksters formed nomadic communities that extended a nomadic impulse already articulated in beat culture, captured in works such as Jack Kerouac's On the Road or Tom Wolfe's The Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test, and personified in figures like Neil Cassidy. Two of the tribes that emerged from this social factory, the Marble Mountain Outlaws and the Temple Tribe, organized the 1970 Vortex One biodegradable Festival of Life in Oregon, a major pacifist assembly described as an assembly of the people of a common creed, namely a creed of peace. After this experience, these groups and others adopted the name Rainbow Family, inspired by rainbow arcs painted on the doors of teepees used to house coordinators at the festival. And during a later caravan to another gathering, a council of around 450 people extended the name to the Rainbow Family of Living Light Gathering of the Tribes and World Peace and Healing Celebration. By this time, the rainbow symbol had already been taken up by the gay movement and various countercultural initiatives, generating names such as Rainbow Farm, Rainbow House or Rainbow Street People, and the term rainbow came to designate a spiritual association of individuals and an assembly of peace based on shared goods, while also being linked to Native American prophecies in which the return of a spirit would unite all peoples in peace and harmony through a cultural rather than biological mixture of traditions necessary for a new society and worldview. One frequently cited version speaks of a time when the earth is devastated and animals die, and people of all colors, beliefs and cultures emerge whose actions make the earth green again, known as Warriors of the Rainbow. In 1970-71, members of the Rainbow Family occupied a house on the outskirts of an Oregon town, opening it as a shelter and effectively constituting the Rainbow Family of Living Light, while older members formulated the vision of convening a First World Family gathering and spent a year preparing the Rainbow Oracle, a collection of articles that narrated the group's origins, reflected on the sacramental use of marijuana, expressed a visionary and mildly apocalyptic call to gather on a sacred mountain in Colorado to await the end of the world, and issued a broad invitation. That invitation, addressed to all races, peoples, tribes, communes, men and women lacking love, to nations and leaders lacking respect, to religions and religious leaders lacking faith, and to politicians lacking charity, called for a gathering beginning on the 1st of July 1972 near Aspen, Colorado, on some 3,000 acres of land to be acquired or rented, where people would give thanks, pray, sing and do as they wished, but with a central moment of collective silence and meditative union at noon on the 4th of July to honor humanity and nature and to pray that people might evolve and live in peace and harmony. 5,000 copies were printed and distributed, one to the president and one to each member of Congress, and the invitation was broadcast on radio and television and through leaflets and information networks, with expectations of thousands of attendees. In the end the land was neither bought nor rented, and the gathering took place on a combination of private land and public land managed by the U.S. Forest Service, which refused to authorize it, inaugurating a prolonged conflict between the rainbows and this institution marked by legal battles that would continue for decades. Coverage in Rolling Stone portrayed Barry E. Plunker Adams, sometimes called a prophet, as having articulated a vision in 1969 of 144,000 chosen ones mentioned in Revelation gathering every Independence Day at a place identified with Table Mountain, where a pyramid would be built and a massive arm at 9,000 feet might trigger apocalyptic events such as Armageddon or world renewal, and reports from participants stress the extraordinary feeling that the end of an old world and the beginning of a new one was at hand, with hopes that walls, prisons and cities would fall, Buffalo would return and Christ would reappear. Approximately 20,000 people ultimately converged on the Colorado gathering, bypassing police and ranger roadblocks to reach the site, and although most of the millenarian expectations and ritual paraphernalia did not materialize, no pyramid was built, no children were interpreted as apocalyptic figures and no rapture occurred. Scattered individuals and groups realized that they formed part of an enormously heterogeneous but nonetheless identifiable community. In retrospect, the first Rainbow Gathering is remembered as a single event that over time generated a family, and a sense of home. After Colorado, the desire arose spontaneously to convene another annual gathering in a different state, generating a rotating national meeting of around 10,000 to 20,000 people held in a different U.S. state each year, moving clockwise like the hands of a clock and the sacred medicine wheel. 2.5 years later, the first regional rainbow gathering was organized by communities and individuals who felt the need to meet more often and closer to home, and over time more organizers, focalizers, and local circles emerged, coordinated through an annual rainbow guide, and periodical, always free. During the 1980s, local and regional gatherings multiplied, strengthening networks among groups and individuals, to the point where, as Gómez-Ullate notes, regional meetings could take place as frequently as weekly, ranging from full moon drum circles on the beach in San Diego, and scouting expeditions to select sites for future gatherings, to picnics and moonlit suppers in places like the Valley of Om, annual Ocala gatherings in Florida, Vision Council meetings, Love and Campout events around Valentine's Day, spring councils in the Pacific Northwest, national planning councils such as the 1999 Spring Council, informal non-picnics such as the Arb Chaos, regional autumn meetings in Michigan, healing drum circles and fairs in designated spaces. This proliferation and the growing size of the movement made it increasingly difficult for veteran participants to define precisely what made a gathering rainbow, leading to debates over the appropriation of the rainbow identity and the essential features of the phenomenon. In Europe, the direct antecedent of rainbow gatherings dates to 1977, when a festival called Happening of the New Age dedicated to simple life in nature was held, and Freestyle University was founded in Switzerland, organizing events in continual conflict with authorities that banned free assemblies. In 1983, the first European rainbow was held in Switzerland at the initiative of two people who had attended gatherings in the United States, bringing together about 200 people, mainly Swiss and Germans, on a border mountain between Switzerland and Italy, from which they were eventually pushed onto the Italian side by Swiss officials enforcing prohibitions on free camping. Subsequent European rainbows grew to between 2,000 and 5,000 participants and achieved a notable regularity. Spain, for example, has hosted a gathering every year even without having a formally recognized regional rainbow, and, according to Gómez-Ullate, have had broadly similar effects to those observed in North America. They have built networks within the European counterculture and forged connections among individuals, alternative settlements and families, with the rainbow identity helping to draw the boundaries of a chosen we and unify previously scattered initiatives into an open, intentional community often referred to as the Rainbow Nation, a non-institutional group requiring no formal membership, where the mere intention to be rainbow and respect for the family's essence suffice, and whose members further assert that the whole world is made of rainbow, although some have not yet found out, signaling an aspirationally broad social, national, ethnic and religious network. At the same time, the rainbow gatherings are described as a living, dynamic cultural experiment always under construction, which develops and is socialized through institutions such as the circle, the talking stick, consensus-based councils, collective building and organizational work, cleaning and maintenance crews and post-gathering cleanup camps, and through routinized behavioral patterns and expressive forms such as hugging, exchanging the phrase "we love you," singing heart songs, drumming circles, musical evenings, group meditations, shared rainbow songs and the valorization of service to others and the community. For many travelers, the gatherings also constitute both a home and an itinerant school, with some structuring their year around the succession of meetings along what is known as the Rainbow Trail, so that at any point in the year a rainbow event is taking place somewhere in the world, and ideas and collaborative projects, communities, caravans, peace marches, shared travel to the next gathering, are transmitted from one meeting to another. The gatherings also function as a gateway or initiation for many participants, who never return to being the same after their first experience, having learned in practice a set of values, attitudes and worldviews associated with alternative lifestyles. For such actors, rainbow life becomes a model of dissidence and a place in the world for those who do not find a place within conventional cultural limits, a seed of alternative consciousness planted in each country where a gathering is held. Finally, Gómez-Ullate emphasizes that the rainbow meetings are both a forum for reunion and an escape route towards the other. During gatherings, camps are visited by local residents and reported on by regional media, and there is a consistently high proportion of newcomers who are often surprised by the radical difference of the experience, which he interprets in terms of initiation theory as a process of purification and ontological mutation in which, through passage across a symbolic threshold, individuals undergo an irreversible conversion that anchors them in new existential patterns. In this sense, the rainbow phenomenon appears as a living, myth-generating cultural experiment that provides a durable, continually reconstructed model of dissident sociality, through the gatherings themselves and the values enacted within them.